Did you know the New York subway system is one of the most efficient ways to get around the city, yet is often overlooked by tourists? Were you aware of the hidden gems you'll find in the suburbs of New York City? When it comes to bucket list destinations for travelers, New York City is bound to come up often. The Big Apple has some of the most well-known tourist attractions you can find. Times Square, the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, the list goes on and on. But even with all these awesome places to see and things to do, there are some common pitfalls when it comes to traveling to this one-of-a-kind city. And we're about to discuss how you can ensure that you don't fall victim to these pitfalls when visiting New York City. Many people assume that when you visit New York, the best way to travel is by taking one of those iconic yellow taxicabs. But in fact, the best way to get around the city quickly and cheaply is by hopping on one of the subway trains. If you have some heavy bags with you, then it makes sense to call an Uber or Lyft. But avoid those yellow cabs because they are going to cost you way more than you should be paying and are not the quickest way to get around the city. Using the subway means buying a Metro card, and each subway ride on the card costs $2.75. There are some other cost-effective options available, such as a weekly pass with unlimited rides or an unlimited 30-day pass. A Metro card will save you a lot of money, and it'll get you from point A to point B faster than any other mode of transportation in the city. So make sure you take full advantage of the city's subway system. New York City is known for having some iconic attractions, especially the ones in Manhattan, such as Times Square and Madison Square Garden, among many others. However, what many tourists fail to realize is how awesome the surrounding boroughs of New York are. For instance, in Brooklyn, you'll find the stunning Brooklyn Bridge, or the wonderful neighborhood of Dumbo, which stands for Down Under the Manhattan Bridge Overpass. Brooklyn has some of the best pizza restaurants in New York as well, such as the acclaimed Grimaldi's. In Queens, you'll find some of the most diverse and authentic shops, restaurants, and more, all throughout the borough. One great neighborhood in particular is Jackson Heights, which offers a blend of cultures and traditions that you simply won't find anywhere else. If there's any place in the world to catch a baseball game, it's at Yankee Stadium. The world-famous New York Yankees call the New York City borough of the Bronx home, and this is a wonderful spot to enjoy America's favorite pastime. Want to get in touch with some of that rugged, old-school feel that New York City is famous for? Then why not take a ferry ride on the Staten Island Ferry? There is so much to do across all 5 of the New York City boroughs. Although Manhattan gets most of the spotlight, and justifiably so, you can't get a true New York experience without paying a visit to its surrounding suburbs. This next mistake to avoid has to do with something you'll be doing a lot of during a New York City visit, and that is walking. While the subway system, buses, and taxi services offer visitors and New Yorkers alike with ample ways to get around town, the steps you take walking around the city add up. From museum to corner store, over to the next point of interest, those city blocks are long, and you should be prepared for it. Wear a reliable and comfy pair of shoes, because otherwise you're going to regret it. And on top of that, you need to understand that it isn't just you and your family or friends walking around in New York City at a tourist space. There are everyday New Yorkers that are late for work or in a hurry for one reason or another, so be mindful of that. New Yorkers have a reputation for being rude, but that couldn't be any further from the truth. New Yorkers operate at a high pace, and they are on edge because the city demands it. So do yourself a favor and don't get in their way. If you want to admire one of the buildings in the city or another landmark, don't stand in the middle of the sidewalk, blocking people from being able to walk by you. And if you don't know where to go, a New Yorker won't brush you off if you ask them the right way. If you don't know how to get to Washington Square Park and want to ask a local, simply ask the person where you can find it. Don't ask the person how their day is or something along those lines. Get straight to the point. Mother Nature doesn't make an exception for New York City in the wintertime. There is a perception among visitors unfamiliar with the climate in the northeast part of the US that New York is simply mild during wintertime. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The city gets cold, and you must prepare accordingly. It gets windy, occasionally snowy, and those temperatures can really drop in the evenings. So bring a warm coat, thick socks, hats, and all that good stuff, and you'll be able to manage. New York City is known for having some of the best food in the world. But why do so many people assume it's just pizza and bagels? While the city certainly does have some fantastic spots for pizza and bagels, there is so much more to its culinary scene that makes it special. Make sure that when you visit the Big Apple, you bring both a big appetite and are willing to broaden your horizons when it comes to eating, because the city is full of unique places to grab a meal. The real gems are in those suburbs. Jackson Heights and Corona are two great neighborhoods in the New York City suburbs, where you can experience the culinary delight of New York City. So make sure you get around and explore. Also, don't be one of those that go to the Applebee's or Olive Garden in Times Square. While there is nothing wrong with those restaurants, they aren't where you should be eating when you are in New York City with so many other unique and amazing options available to you. One of the most popular and amazing experiences you can have in New York is at a Broadway show. But one of the most common mistakes people make when visiting the city is thinking that they can get a ticket to a show the day of the performance at the box office. Even if you luck out and snag a ticket, the price you'll be paying for that ticket is going to be absurdly high. So as a word of advice, order your tickets online in advance, and you won't regret it. Times Square is full of all sorts of attractions and stores that'll leave you overwhelmed in the best kind of ways. However, one thing to keep an eye out for and to avoid are some of the people trying to make a quick buck off of people like you that don't know how New York works. When in Times Square, you'll notice people dressed up in costumes and others trying to sell you CDs or other items. These people make a living off of tourists, and their goal is to get you to overpay for what they do. So do yourself a favor and just keep on walking when you see this. Your wallet will thank you for it. It's among the most iconic locations in all of New York City, and it's the Empire State Building. It's a beautiful part of the New York City skyline and a wonderful sight to see. But what most people fail to realize is where you can actually get a good view of the building. The best views are from top of the Rock, or from the edge at Hudson Yards, or from one of the rooftop bars scattered throughout the city. Climbing up the Empire State Building is fun and all, but remember why the building is so famous in the first place. And don't make the mistake of missing out on the amazing views you can get of the actual building elsewhere in the city. New York City is one of the best places in the world to visit and a hot spot for tourists year-round. With so much to see and do, it can be easy to make some of these common mistakes that you might overlook when taking a trip to the Big Apple. If you keep an eye out for some of these items, you will be more than fine, and your trip to New York will be as good as advertised.